change. Change in our lives, that can be one of the most difficult experiences to have, and one that we resist to such a heavy degree. And yet, so often as we look at our lives and what we're experiencing, that's also the greatest desire that we would have, is to be able to change our lives and to change our experiences. So today, I'm really pleased to have Alice and Robertson on the show with us today. She is a cognitive behavioral expert, and she works with people to help them to make those changes that are necessary and desired so that they can really, truly live a life of fulfillment and happiness and freedom. So please join us today. I think you're going to find this discussion extremely enlightening.
At the end of the day, it's not about what you have or even what you've accomplished. It's about what you've done with those accomplishments. It's about who you've lifted up, who you've made better. It's about what you've given back. Denzel Washington. Welcome to Inspire Vision. Our sole purpose is to elevate the lives of others and to inspire you to do the same.
Folks, Dr. Doug here. Thanks for joining us, and really pleased to have Alice and Roberts on us with the show today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me here.
Oh, it's really a pleasure. I think this is going to be a really fun discussion that we're going to have. I think, first of all, what is a cognitive behavioral expert?
I love when people ask me that. So cognitive behavior is when a circumstance happens and we have a thought about the circumstance and a feeling about the circumstance, and we actually become the circumstance unless we know better. So we get all wrapped up in, the politics of the world and religion and all of these, the car accident, the grandma's death, whatever is happening externally, we become that external event instead of going within and just like staying in our lane. That's cognitive behavior, is learning how to stay in our lane.
Oh, I really like that. I've heard that described. In fact, I've described it very similar to that an event occurs. And when an event occurs, there's no emotion to the event. But the minute we bring in the emotion, as you say, we now become that event. So I love how you're describing it. And what was your life experiences? I mean, it's really interesting. We all are here because of our previous experiences in our lives. Yep. What brought you to where you are today?
Wow. I mean, that is such a loaded question.
I know.
Because I'm 56. And so I tell people the journey has been interesting so far, really interesting. I think the biggest event in my life, of course, that started everything was placing my son for adoption. I was 20 when all of that happened. And, my fiance didn't want me to be pregnant. And so, he and his dad kicked me out of my fiance's house. And then I went to live with my, mentally unstable mother. And when I had to tell her that I was pregnant, she kicked me out of her house. And, I lived in my car. I didn't have anywhere else to go. And, thank God that, the universe planted on my path, one of my professors who, God rest his soul, he was just an amazing human. And he introduced me to Napoleon Hill. And if you're not familiar with him, he, coined the phrase, "Your thoughts become things." And it was just in studying Napoleon Hill while I lived in my car for 3 weeks that, we have the power to change our reality with our thoughts. And that's what started the whole pathway for me for everything.
And you've been doing this for how long now? Working with people, working with clients, helping clients?
25 years.
25 years. And you've had a few accolades. I know the one that I noticed was you were one of the top 100 coaches in the world.
Yep.
Tell
It's
us a little bit
crazy.
about that. I know you can brag about yourself for a minute.
Well, I'm number 75 and I would have taken number 100. You know, I didn't even know that I was being considered for that honor. I had no idea. And they judge that based on people's outcomes and philanthropy and you know, how much the person is really committed to seeing change in the world. And I give a lot away. As a matter of fact, this week I'm in the middle of one of my free webinar series right now. And I do that because I really believe that seeds have to be planted in people for them to see where they are and that it's possible for them to get where they want to go. And I was recognized for that. And it's such an incredible honor.
Oh, well, that's great. And congratulations for that.
Thank
You
you.
have a statement on your website, and I love it. Let me just read it. You're one step closer to changing everything. You have permission to be you. Now, I love that statement. I really focus on that whole concept of being and who we truly are.
Yes.
I think sometimes, though, and here's what I want to ask you, someone will listen to that and they're going, well, I am me. And yet, as you know, and as I've been made aware, so often we really aren't us because we have been so imprinted. We've had so many experiences that have caused things to go into our conscious and our subconscious minds to the point that they literally are ruling our lives.
Yeah.
So how on earth, number one, do we get a sense of who we really are? And by getting that sense, maybe having a desire to actually become.
I love this conversation. Because, I tell everybody, our soul incarnates for a reason. We're not just born just to, work at our insurance desk or whatever, unless that's our unless that's our, purpose and our passion. But, the second we're born, we're judged. We're judged by, are we healthy or not healthy? Are we quote unquote normal, or is there quote unquote something wrong with us? We have all of these hurdles that we have to cross from day one. And I believe that we are born infants, and in the care of someone else so that we can find our way back to who we are, soulfully find our way back, and we're so trained as humans to be human doing and not human being. When you go to a party, it's like, what do you do? It's not who are you, but what do you do? As children, what do you want to do when you grow up? The whole purpose of school is, to train us into what we're going to do. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And we can be so in that confined box of doing that we forget who we are. And it's such a beautiful process to watch people, first of all, go, wow, that makes so much incredible sense what you just said, and then that opens up this portal inside of us. And then we can start to really see, like, wow, I am missing a lot here. I'm missing a lot here by focusing so much on what I do instead of who I am.
Well, and I love that concept. There's a statement in the Bible that is, I am that I am.
Yes.
And there are many great religious leaders of all different religions. So not just to pick out one, but in this case, I'm more familiar with that. But what's interesting is I talk a little bit about the fact, okay, so do we do in order to become, or do we do because we are? And because we are, therefore we do. And I think that that's a concept that a lot of times when I say that, people are scratching their heads trying to figure out what on earth, have you gone crazy or whatever. But the reality is, and I think you hit on a really important point, who we are will represent, if we truly become who we are, then the doingness is an entirely different thing than trying to keep doing so that we can become who we think we want to become.
Exactly. Yes. I mean, as a matter of fact, I teach becoming the person first.
Yes.
That's what I teach. That's my whole teaching, is that we have to become the person first. Because, our brain hates change. It hates it. It's why moving and getting married and getting divorced and people dying, that is why it's so stressful, is because at the core of all of those things is huge change. And our brain hates change. So that's why we have to visualize and pray and meditate and script and live the life that we want to step into first. We have to train our brain to believe that it's possible. Otherwise, we're going to run up against resistance every single time.
Well, and you bring up some interesting things. You get a divorce in this society, at least in the past, and I think to some degree still. All of a sudden, there's that sense of shame, that sense of guilt.
Oh yeah,
so
failure.
All of the things that go on when we experience change, all of a sudden we are feeling that guilt, we're feeling that shame, whatever that happens to be. How on earth do we overcome that? And is there a root cause to that, in your opinion? Or does it just happen each time some type of change or situation occurs?
The thing that is key to all of this, I'm sorry about my dogs barking. The thing that is that's key to all of this is that we have to embrace it. Most people run from it. It's like, I'm not going to deal with that. I'm going to pretend. I'm going to pretend like everything's fine. I'm going to focus on the good. I'm only going to focus on the good. I'm not going to talk about the pain. I'm not going to talk about the bad feelings that I'm experiencing right now. I'm just going to go for a run, or I'm going to, I'm just going to go to this party. I'm not going to talk about it. I want to talk about it. And the opposite is actually what heals us. The opposite is, wow, I feel really ashamed about this. And the reason that I feel so ashamed is that I'm the first person in my family to ever get divorced. Or, I got a divorce because I had an affair. Or, this divorce happened because, we just don't see eye to eye anymore. Because shame hates acknowledgement. Shame hates the voice. It hates actually giving it attention, because then it's like, oh man, now I don't have anywhere to go because you called me out. So,
well, and I love that. The thought that comes to my mind, the saying is, that which we resist persists.
Yes.
And exactly that. I love the fact that you actually, take it in and admit it and acknowledge it and own it. And
yes.
do you find when you do that, somehow it just kind of takes the pressure off of that situation and off of that sense of shame and guilt?
I do, because, there was a lot of turmoil in my family growing up. My mom was violent. My parents divorced when I was 10, but you think that divorce ends the chaos. It doesn't. And so there was just a lot of chaos. But when I was in, my teens and even into my early 20s, when people would ask about, how I grew up, I would just say, oh, I had these siblings and, my parents divorced when I was 10, but it was really a good thing. It brought a lot of peace to the house, and which was true in some ways, but I would never talk about what was happening. I never talked about it. And so I walked around with this feeling of, gosh, if people only knew, if they only knew about my child abuse, if they only knew that my parents were miserable, if they only knew this stuff, then I'm going to be horribly rejected. I'm not going to have any friends. People are going to have all these horrible, bad feelings about me. And so for a long time, I just wouldn't talk about it. And I'll never forget, like, I was at a party one time and this woman was like, man, when I told her about, my fake childhood story, she was like, man, I wish I was you, because there was so much violence in my house and my dad was this way and my mom was that way. And, we had all this stuff happening. And then I was like, you know what? Me too. And it was just like this big, just like release happening of, it's okay. It's okay to tell the story, how it really was and how it really is. And, she and I just were embracing and she was like, thank you so much. And I was like, no, thank you, because you just like set me free. And that's the thing I think that people need to realize is that, first of all, there truly is nothing to be ashamed of. Maybe murder and genocide, but just the day-to-day things that happen in our society, people need to talk more. They need to use their voice more so that they can heal.
Well, and you have such an important point there, that if we keep it bundled up inside, it's just festering inside, and that creates all sorts of issues, both emotional and physical, as far as health and all of those types of things. You have coined your system as personalized science. What does that mean exactly?
Yeah. So, studying cognitive behavior, it is scientific because, the brain just functions in a certain way with every single person, which is we have our conscious brain and then we have our subconscious brain, where we're making 95% of our decisions from our subconscious brain. And so studying all that science fascinates me. And it's great. And if you just stay on the science part, you will progress along your path and you will make a lot of amazing changes in your life. But the thing that I realized is that the spiritual component is so important, because the spirituality is the faith that, we are here for a bigger reason, and that, we have an intuitive side of us too, which is the voice of God. Our intuition is God's guidance inside of us. It's saying, don't go down that dark alley. Don't go home that way tonight. Turn left, don't turn right. Pay attention to this person. There's more here than meets the eye, that kind of thing. And when you combine the science and the spirituality, your life becomes magical. It really does.
Well, and it's interesting. You talk about the science and you talk about the unconscious. And really what fascinates me is this concept of neuroscience, the brain, and how oftentimes when we watch ourselves doing things and we sit back later and go, why on earth did I do that? Or why am I experiencing this? What's interesting, I've kind of gotten to the point where I think, we have developed habits, and those habits are a result of neural pathways in our brain that are functioning. And as we know, it takes time, but you literally can change habits. And when you do change habits, what happens to the neural pathways?
They change.
And the old ones kind of go to the side. They may not disappear, but they go to the side. But the new ones there now are getting more attention. And I think that's really important for people to understand that, yes, you can change. Yes, we all can change. What I find is the challenge is people being able to get to that awareness step that says, you know what, number one, I'm looking at the outcome of my life and I'm not happy. I don't like this. Okay, well, that's one level of awareness. But I think the toughest level of awareness is for them to say, and you know what? If I want to see the real cause of this, all I have to do is look in a mirror.
Well, I love to use metaphors. You know, Jesus used a lot of metaphors. Buddha used a lot of metaphors. Even Nelson Mandela used a lot of metaphors. I love to use metaphors because people can really see it. So the metaphor that I love about the reptilian brain and the neurotransmitters is the garden. So if you have a yard and you never tend that yard, it's going to grow in the natural way that the soil sees fit. And you're going to have plants. I mean, you're going to have weeds and you're going to have grass and you're going to have random flowers from seeds that blow in. And you're going to have maybe even some oak trees from random seeds. And you're going to have all of these things. So it's not that there's anything wrong with the yard, but it's not going to be maybe the way that you want your garden to grow. So the first thing that you have to do is you have to look at the garden and you have to decide, what do I want to stay? Well, I actually want the oak trees to stay. And I kind of like the fact that this bush showed up for no reason. And so those things are going to stay. I want those to stay. But I don't want these thorny weeds and I don't want this other stuff. So you have to pluck those and you have to pull them out. So the process of personalized science that a lot of people have a struggle with when they're working with me is that they just want to feel better.
Yeah.
You know, they just want to feel better. It's like, Allison, just bring in the new plants. And I'm like, no, you have to examine what you don't want first. And we've got to heal that. We've got to look at it. We've got to heal it. We've got to pull it out before you can bring in the new and plant the new. And the thing is that when we give the old or the weeds just a little bit of attention, they'll heal so fast. People think it takes years. It doesn't. It does not take years to build brand new neurotransmitters or neuropathways. They can be developed really, really quickly, but you've got to give the weeds the attention first.
Yes. And you know, I think I first started with that particular philosophy, which I love, when I was working with business owners and, you know, the small businesses and saying, all right, what is your ideal scene? What is your vision? What is it that you want out of this business? And then I realized, you know, it's so easy to move from there into personal life. And, you know, for people to say, you know what, this is what I want. And then you look at what are you getting? And the minute that you can look at that and realize that there's a huge contradiction between what you really want and what you're getting. And I think the challenge is for many people, and I mean, I've heard people say it, I've probably said it myself once in a while, is I don't think I can ever really reach that level, or I don't think that I can really be that person, or I don't think I can really have those experiences. So how do you help people to start to accomplish that? You know, The Secret came out, so you have all types of, you know, things that you're saying to yourself and all of that type of thing. And
yeah, I loathe that movie.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything, but since you said it, and it's not that I loathe it, I think they did a great job. And I've actually talked to some people who were originally part of that, who have actually changed.
The people that were part of originally are amazing, beautiful souls. Like Lisa Nichols was my very first mentor. I love her so much.
And they've changed their tune.
Yes.
If they did an update of The Secret, it would
Yes.
probably be, you know what, this really isn't a secret type of thing.
Right.
But what is it? How do we end up really moving forward in your experience? And how do you help your clients to really, first of all, be willing to admit, all right, I'm not where I want to be, and then go in and really start to eliminate and reframe some of those areas that are causing them to have a different experience, a different perception of life that they really don't want to have?
Well, the first thing that I make them aware of is that the reptilian brain, that lower brain, it tells us three lies. I don't know, I can't, it's too hard. And so when someone comes to me and they're like, Allison, I can't have that. Like, okay, that's your lower brain talking. It's trying to keep you alive. It's trying to keep you safe. It doesn't want you to change. It's too hard. It's your lower brain talking. It doesn't want you to change. It doesn't know how to keep you alive if you're the millionaire or if you have your own business. I don't know how to do it. Yes, you do. That's your lower brain. Your lower brain. So it's just making them aware of where they're living, or they're living in their subconscious, which is going to just squeeze them tight and, keep them exactly where they are. Or, are they willing? Because willingness will take us so far. So are you willing to just step into your conscious brain? Are you willing to think a new thought? Are you willing to just open the door? You don't have to do anything. That's what I tell them at the very beginning. It's like, I don't want you to do anything. I don't want you to get into any action. The only thing I want you to do is just be willing. And that willingness alone is like a raft that they step into. And that raft will start to carry them down this conscious river. And once you're willing and once you're in that raft, it's like, wow. Then everything starts to open up. It's like, are you willing to admit that you don't love yourself fully? Are you willing to admit that, you're operating in a lot of shame and guilt right now? And once you're just willing, it's like that reptilian brain, those neurotransmitters they just ease up a little bit. And it gives person room to start exploring and saying, what if? What if I was willing? What does that look like? How would I feel? And that's where we get started. And it's so exciting.
Well, and you know what? It takes courage.
It does.
It takes courage. And I think, you haven't really talked much about fear, but I think that oftentimes fear can rule our lives.
Oh, fear does rule our lives. And the media uses fear to rule us. And, pastors and preachers and priests and rabbis, they use fear to keep people, behaving properly. And the medical field uses fear to keep us, from not dying when we're going to ultimately die anyway. I mean, the fear is a driving for parents use fear. If you do this, you're going to be grounded. If you do that, you're going to, fear is a thing. It's a real thing.
And, wouldn't it be interesting for us as a society, as people, to start to minimize, because I think so often we don't realize, for instance, as parents, we don't realize how much we have embedded fear within our children. Yep. And many times we do that because it's been embedded in us by our parents, and as you say, by teachers, by friends, by society in general.
Works.
And
it works.
It works. It makes you change. But as you say, that's not the real you. That's really the imprinted you, the social you, who you're really not. So how do we help people to develop that courage and say, you know what, I know I'm fearful, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to be that courageous individual.
Well, I think the first thing that's so important is that, it doesn't take a lot of courage. If you compare it to, the Bible, if you compare it to what Jesus said, courage is the size of a mustard seed. You don't have to be this big, brave warrior that, comes out with the swords and and the cannons and all this stuff. If it's just one step in the direction of bravery, it's just one step. You don't have to climb a mountain. You don't have to do those things. And I think that people get really discouraged when they see people like you or me. And they're like, well, I can never be Dr. Doug. I mean, look at him, like his life is like all together, and, he has degrees and he has, a podcast, and I can't, look at Allison, like she has this and she has that. And I can't. Yes, you can. You can. And, just like you, I'm sure that you would agree that, we took one step. And then
5 years ago for me. Yeah.
And we took another step and then another step. And it's just one step in a new direction.
And I think you've hit on the key. Is all courage really is taking that one step. It's like, are you willing just to take one step? Because if you can do that, it'll be a little bit easier to take the next step. Yes. And then the next step, and so on and so forth. I want to go back to this concept of the secret, but really the science of manifesting, because I think for so many people, the affirmations, all of these types of things, which I think for some people can be good, and yet for a lot of people, they get really discouraged because it isn't working. What are your thoughts about what really is the science of manifesting? And I love the fact that you're doing it from a scientific standpoint rather than an emotional standpoint.
Yeah. So let's say that you have 50 pounds to lose. The doctors told you that you have 50 pounds. Your spouse is kind of hinted around. You look in the mirror, you don't feel good. You know that you need to get this 50 pounds off. Well, if you walk around saying, I'm thin, I'm so much thinner today. I'm so thin, I'm thin. This 50 pounds is not on my body anymore. Your reptilian brain is in there going, man, you're such a liar. Liar pants on fire, man. Yeah, you go ahead and sing that tune because we know way different. As a matter of fact, I think you should go eat a donut, because the reptilian brain knows it's a lie. And so then shame is actually in there already doing its work if we're walking around saying something that we know is a lie. So the way that to make an affirmation work is to say something about losing that 50 pounds that you believe. So maybe it's just, I'm in the process of losing this weight. It's going to feel so amazing to lose this weight. It's really going to feel fantastic. And I'm becoming the person who is 50 pounds lighter. Those things your reptilian brain can latch onto because they're not lies if you believe them. And they won't work if you don't believe them. I mean, if you're looking in the mirror and you're thinking, man, my rear end really does look, big in these jeans. If you're thinking that, but you're saying out loud, yeah, I'm beautiful. I'm this, I'm that. It doesn't work. So the science part of it is that you have to believe it. You cannot talk yourself into it. It has to be something that you believe.
It has to be a statement that you can believe. I love the idea that I'm going to be able to lose 50 pounds.
Yes.
That's true.
Yes.
Okay. So there's the affirmations, but what comes after affirmations?
What comes after affirmations is I teach thought model. We learn it in, psychology 101, but a thought model truly is, so the circumstance is losing 50 pounds of weight. And then, my thought is, I can do this. I know I can do this. Or I'm in the process of doing it. And how does that make you feel? Makes me feel really good, because our thoughts and our feelings become our beliefs. That is what our belief is.
All right. So I feel that way, and then I go have my donut.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. If you're having a donut and you know that you should be having a salad instead, then you know that it's your thought processes that are messed up. It's not the weight that is the problem. It's the thought and the feeling that's the issue. And I tell people, get out a napkin and a pen and write donut at the top of the napkin, and ask yourself, why did I just eat this donut? Because it makes me feel really good. And man, it brings me comfort, and it brings me joy, and it brings me this and that. And then I tell people, well, what besides a donut that's healthy can make you feel the same way? Hugging my dog, praising God, petting my...
What? I'm sorry. Keep going. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's just because the circumstance is not the thing.
So when we look at someone, and I happen to be very analytical, and so
I am too.
like, okay, you want to accomplish this? Let's sit down and let's write out a plan. I'm going to exercise, at least starting out. I'm going to exercise a half an hour every day, and then I'm going to work out. Work it up to 45 minutes, and then an hour. And, I was talking to my nutritional physician the other day and going, you know what, I want to lose a little bit of weight here. And he goes, well, he says, we got you eating right. We got you all doing that. So the next thing you got to do is start walking 2 hours a day. And I'm going, are you kidding me? And I'm telling my son that, and he says, Dad, just start out with an hour, and then go an hour and 10, and then an hour and 20, and ultimately do that. But here's my question for you. How do you help someone to get to the point from just the thought process, the manifestation of what they want to accomplish, into actually identifying steps that they can take that are actually going to help them to accomplish that which they desire to manifest?
So, but before you ever buy a pair of tennis shoes or plan out your route of an hour, the very first thing, if you were my client, the very first thing I would ask you is, Doug, do you like to walk? Does it bring you any joy to walk? Does it?
And yeah, in my case, yeah, because I live in an area where I can get out and walk, and I look at the beautiful lake, and I look at the mountains and the clouds, and absolutely.
So then I would say to focus on how walking makes you feel, not the outcome of losing the weight, but how are you going to feel when you're out walking? Well, you just said it. I'm going to feel amazing. The lake is beautiful. The sky is fantastic. The scenery is wonderful. So I would say to you, great. Then focus on that. Focus on that. Do you want to go outside? Do you like to be outside? Do you like to walk? Yes, great. Focus on walking. Don't focus on the fact that that you have to walk, or that you have to do this or that. Just focus on the fact that you want to.
Okay, interesting philosophy. So, if you're analytical and I'm analytical, and I'm wanting to sit down and write all these steps down in order to accomplish that goal, say of losing weight, you're saying something a little bit different, I think.
Yes.
So let's forget the walking. Let's look at some other example, and maybe you can come up with one of, here's a person that really is very analytical, and therefore, I'm going to write these steps in order to accomplish this. And what you're saying is focusing on that doesn't work. I'm fascinated. All right. So how do you do that?
Throwing action at a plan is what everyone does. That's why it never works, or rarely works. You might have some false wins, someone wants to quit smoking. They may throw, Chantix at it, or patches, or whatever. But if they're not working on their thoughts and their feelings about being a non-smoker, then they're going to either white knuckle their way through not smoking, or they're going to trade smoking with something else, like too much coffee or, too much Amazon.com or something. Because if we don't address what is happening inside of us, you smoke for a reason. You smoke for a reason. The reason is something. And I work a lot with people that, that want to quit smoking and want to stop doing something. I'm like, well, we need to look at why you do it first. You can't just throw action at it, because the brain just doesn't work that way. The brain is going to be like, your reptilian brain is going to be like, you are so cute. You're so funny. You really think that Shantix is going to keep me from talking you into smoking? And you have to you have to build a relationship with your reptilian brain. And because our reptilian brain really is just our inner child. Mm-hmm. So we got to make new agreements with that little kid that's in there.
So you're suggesting if we really can start to control that reptilian brain, the unconscious, that child within us, that as we do that, we are naturally just going to take the steps necessary to accomplish whatever we're looking to accomplish.
Yes. And it's not about control. It's about relationship. We have to build a relationship with our reptilian brain, because a lot of people sometimes will be just like, Allison, I'm just going to tell my reptilian brain to go, jump off a bridge. And I'm like, no, you don't really want to do that, because your reptilian brain is what keeps your, heart beating and your lungs, taking air in. Our reptilian brain is what makes us blink and swallow and, do all the things. So it's building a relationship with the reptilian brain and trying to understand, start to ask yourself questions like, okay, why do I only listen to music if the volume is on 47 instead of 12? Why do I do what I do? Why, in your case, like, why have I put on the extra pounds that I want to get rid of? Why are they there? No.
And that does it. Any examples? Do you have any stories you can share without revealing names and so forth of people that literally have been able to overcome some really tremendous obstacles?
Yes. I mean, gosh, I have dozens, but some of the ones that stand out. So I had a client that she had gastric bypass surgery and she lost 120 pounds. And then 3 years later, she weighed 140 pounds heavier than she did before the surgery. And her doctor was like, I can do the surgery again. Let's just do the surgery again. But she felt inside of her that, this isn't about surgery and it's not about food. This is about me. And she came to that on her own by, watching The Secret and doing some other things. So she was referred to me, and through the process of us, and she was one of these women that, my parents were perfect. Don't talk about my parents. They did everything right. My siblings are perfect. Don't talk about them. They do everything right. My teachers were all perfect. Everything's perfect, 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 perfect. And so in our sessions one day, I was like, well, for everything being so perfect, you really are a mess. So why do you think that is? And it was just this unraveling of her unraveling her story of, feeling like she had to be perfect and realizing, that there's no such thing. And so she would be perfect, quote unquote, during the daytime, but then at night, she took her shoeboxes down and she ate, Twinkies and Reese's peanut butter cups and gummy bears and all the things in secret where no one saw her. And so she was able to convince even her own husband that, it was a metabolism issue. And, her parents would just be like, gosh, all you eat is like egg whites and salad. You're so perfect with your diet. We don't understand what's happening. And all day long, these people would tell her, like, you're doing everything right. Everything is so perfect. And this whole hold of perfection and having to be perfect with everyone was so ingrained in her. And the moment that she took her husband into their walk-in closet and she's like, I just want you to start taking all the shoe boxes down and opening them. And he was like, I don't understand what I'm looking at. And she's like, you're looking at what I do from 2:00 in the morning until 4:00 in the morning while you're asleep. This is what I do. This is who I am. I'm not perfect. And it just watching just the whole, and watching him too, like just come full court press for her and just showing up for her in a brand new, completely different way of just saying, like, I am here. I'm here for you. Like, we're going to work through this together. I am going to, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Like, it can be so messy. I don't care. And just watching them over a year's time and slowly seeing the weight come off of her, not because she had to lose weight, but because she finally healed this perfection wound. It's still, like, it makes me still to this day, like, just get really choked up.
Well, and weight is a big issue, but there are so many other issues that have been so deeply imprinted with us. I'm not good enough. I can never accomplish this. All of those types of things that have created.
I've taken people's income levels I've added a lot of zeros to people's incomes just because our self-worth equals our self-worth.
Yes. And it's fascinating how that works. So do you have specific processes that you use, or is it just kind of talking all of the time?
Well, I use a whole scientific model of, cognitive behavior, and then working with people and incorporating, some level of spirituality into it. I know even if you're an atheist or agnostic, you can still work with me because I help people to understand that spirituality is not dogma.
That's a good point. That's a really good point to understand. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, it is a whole process. And if, I'm happy. I'm always happy to, book time with people to help them understand, what the process is and see, if it's for them. I'm not for everyone,
and how do people find you?
They can find me on my website. It's Allison Roberts, and I need to spell it because a lot of people spell Allison all different kinds of ways. It's ALLYSON Roberts.com. That's the best way to find me.
Well, I wish we had more time. I really wish
this has been wonderful.
Yeah, we could go on and on and on, but Allison, thank you so much. I can see, number one, the work that you've done in order to reach the level of wisdom that you have. And number two, the value that you are sharing with other people. And I think that becomes the key, is really being able to take whatever experiences we've had and in some way discover how we can then touch the lives of others. So thank you so much in all of those aspects.
Thank you so much, Doug, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you bet. And folks, thanks for joining us. Take a listen a couple of times on this and then get a hold of Allison, because there's some really, really important things here that we need to really understand and internalize. So thanks for listening. Hope you'll join us again soon.